Welcome to the Right Time Podcast. The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Happy Thursday, kiddos. Welcome to the Right Time with Bomani Jones. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here. And, of course, ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. You want to hit me up? You got two ways, fam. 1-888-ESPN. That's 1-888-729-3776. Or y'all can try your luck on the 1-800-Flowers Twitter feed at ESPN Radio, at Clinton Yates. You know the disclaimer. If you come incorrect in my mentions, I will embarrass you in front of your friends and your family, and I will not apologize. Understand that. Those are the rules. That said, let's get to the talk. I went to an NBA basketball game last night. You know why? Because the NBA has already started. So I decided I wanted to partake. But also because I'm filling in here for Bomani Jones, I'm going to start things with a tremendous statement that Bomani made yesterday on Twitter. It reads as follows. There's too much talent in the NBA to only get locked into who's going to the finals. There's a lot to watch in the NBA this year. There's one title contender in the East, but 6 or 7 legitimately interesting teams, and most of the West fits that bill. Now, this is a tremendous point from Bo. And more importantly, I'd extend it out to a little something different, which is that the NBA is now at a point generationally where you've got to wonder and you've got to ask yourself whether or not basketball is what you really like, or whether or not you fell in love with a certain generation of stars and therefore you connected to them and the league. Because right now, what I'm seeing in the NBA are some of the best basketball players I've ever seen. Giannis out here in Milwaukee? Have you seen this dude play basketball? It's like a dude is playing a different game. I imagine that for somebody who has never seen a basketball game, if you walked into a building and saw that guy playing, you would have a completely different understanding of what the sport was versus otherwise. My man put on a clinic against the Celtics last night, and it was unbelievable. I happened to be at the game where Joel Embiid was playing against my Wizards. The Zardos had a little trouble handling them, but Embiid, again, he started off the game standing outside, pump fakes a three. My man is a center, by the by. Gets Marcin Gortat up in the air, and then almost ends Jason Smith's life on 2 dribbles and tried to cram it, but he missed it. There are some incredible basketball players that are in the league now, and there are some even more intriguing stories from a team standpoint. You might have read Jackie McMullen's story on the cover of ESPN the magazine regarding what's going on with the Rockets. The Arugulas, as I like to call them. If you want to know what the etymology of that is, you can ask me that on the side, and I'll let you know. But the Arugulas have an interesting situation going on. The Clippers are borderline interesting. And we're just out west. You know, it seems obvious if you want to talk about how the NBA offseason is more interesting than the NBA regular season. Well, in my opinion, that means you don't necessarily really like basketball that much. And that's fine, because all the things that actually happened in the offseason made enough of a storyline in each particular market to make a lot more things interesting than you think. We got Lonzo Ball with his first game tonight. First regular season game, that is. And the Lakers are an interesting story, not just because they've got a ball on their team. They got a nice little young squad. There are people that are talking about them as the 8th seed. The NBA right now, from a talent standpoint, is as good as I can remember in a long time. And what I like most about it is that we're not seeing one of these generational turnovers where there's only 1 or 2 dudes in the next generation who you can rely on to entertain you for years to come. Some of these elder statesmen in the league, your Carmelos of the world, they're on the back end. And that's fine. That is totally fine. There was a long time when the NBA was in the business of keeping old dudes on the end of benches for times that it just seemed like, yo, when is this league finally going to get younger? Well, it's here. It is very much here, and I'm enjoying it quite a bit. I'm Clinton Yates. I'm filling in for Bomani Jones. You're listening to The Right Time on ESPN Radio on a Thursday. Give me a phone call. I want to know what you think about the league. Because there's a lot of old heads that are out here telling me that nobody plays any positions, can't nobody play no defense, the game ain't the same because dudes aren't punching each other in the face 9 times a quarter. Forget all that, man. You see the athleticism of these guys? Dog, I watched the 76ers play last night, and I'm not just saying this because of the Sixers. I just happen to be at that game, so I'm sort of stressing it right now. They are long, they are lanky, and that team's not even good. The style of play right now is what I like, not even getting into the competitive factor. Mazzardo's got a couple of issues, but they're looking all right. The Bucks are a real deal team. I talked about G earlier. Giannis. The Celtics are obviously a good team. They didn't look half bad after Gordon Hayward went down with that gruesome injury. They kept up with with the Cavaliers. Now, do I think that bodes well for them long term? No. But the NBA is interesting, y'all. Don't try to tell me that just because you think that the Cavs and the Warriors are the only 2 teams that can win the finals, that suddenly the regular season is not of import. Number one, you see how quickly things can change from an injury standpoint. You see how quickly a team's fate can suddenly shift if somebody goes down with something. The Celtics are who I'm thinking of in this scenario. I got a car alarm going off in the background. Just deal with it, y'all. Anyway. Things can change. Draymond Green is dealing with an MRI situation that could put him down. The league is very interesting right now. And I really enjoyed the way that they managed to put things together. 888-ESPN, 888-729-3776. Henry in Illinois, how you doing today? All right. Bugsy in Indiana, you're on the air.
What's going on, man?
What up?
NBA is 5 times better than it used to be in the 80s and 90s. So many more better players.
All right. Thanks for the phone call, Bugsy. I would go off on a long tangent about how I wish there were more people in the world named Bugsy, but I'm just going to thank that guy for calling in. Is Bugsy one of those nicknames that's like a side nickname for something that I don't know? Like, is there another name that leads to Bugsy that I'm not familiar with, Shannon? Do you know this?
Actually, Googling this as we speak, too.
Okay, well, hold on. Don't ruin the surprise, because there's a lot of names that are like that. You know what I mean? Like, I got the guy I played striker with in high school. His name was Francisco. Everybody called him Pancho. You know, that was the normal derivative nickname from that. William to Bill is one that I can think of. There's a lot of other ones that sort of exist in this. It doesn't necessarily sound the same, but it is not dissimilar. Is Bugsy one of these? What is the big reveal?
Really no big reveal. There's a couple definitions in the Urban Dictionary that I'm not.
Be careful.
But as far as like real definitions, I'm not really seeing anything. I don't know where the nickname came from, but yeah, Bugsy's one of those words, though. We need more Bugsy's, though.
We need way more Bugsy's. Bugsy's like an old-timey nickname. Like, you don't hear about cats just go, yo, that's my man. You saw your man Bugsy over there? Bugsy's got this hot new mixtape. Nah, ain't no Bugsy's in these streets. Unless you're trying to pull like a 90s rapper bit where you're, making up mafioso names in order to give yourself street cred. But do people even do that anymore? No. Ain't no little Bugsy verts out here in these streets. 1-888-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. Talking about how the NBA is full of actual fun storylines. Phil in Long Island, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for taking the call. Yeah, I think the NBA is better now than it's ever been. I mean, like you were saying, with the elbows and all that stuff in the post, like now just everyone's so skilled. It's just way more fun to watch now than it's ever been.
Thanks for the phone call. He's right. I mean, some of these guys in this league, you look at dudes like, just off the top of my head, guys like Clint Capella. You see guys like that running around. You're like, yo, what? These dudes? You see my man Fox out there in Sacramento. I mean, there are guys who play the game in a way that 10 years ago you'd look at and you'd say he either doesn't have a position or he's too freewheeling or he's got to figure out, some other form of his game. That's not the case anymore, man. Those dudes are just on the court doing everything these days, and it's a beautiful thing to watch if you actually like the sport and some level.
Clint,
what I'll call evolution. Sorry, Sean.
Well, let me ask you, you were at the game last night, Sixers in Washington. What were your thoughts on Ben Simmons? For folks who don't remember, number 1 overall pick last year, had to sit out last year, 6'10" point guard. What'd you think?
His game is amazing. He's faster than you might believe. That was the thing. It was his foot quickness with and without the ball that shocked me. He popped a quick steal on a breakaway on a botch pass, was down the court in three paces and jammed it. Like, 6'10" point guard, I don't know what here's the thing. You don't have a pre-programmed belief as to what that's supposed to mean anymore. You might see it in college. You might see the way that guy's game adapts from what he was playing against at the NCAA level to the pros. But when you don't really see guys that much in college and or they're off a couple years, you don't really have any idea what you're going to get. This dude was good. And I'm not just talking about serviceable. And he wasn't even the best player on the court last night. John Wall might have been the best player on the court, but dude Covington had 29 points. This guy went to Tennessee State. He has 6 threes. Tell me you'd heard of that guy before last night. You hadn't. All right? The NBA right now is as high on a player-to-player talent level as it's ever been in my lifetime, and I, for one, am happy to see it.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Thursday. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and guests on The Right Time up here via the Shell Penzo Performance Line. Get in touch with us on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at Clinton Yates, at ESPN Radio. Got some decent tweets so far. I'll read some later if y'all step your game up. But right now, it's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. The NBA season has gotten off to an interesting start. There's a lot of storylines going on. Boogie Cousins is already getting texts. The Suns are already getting blown out of the building. The Minnesota Timberwolves have lights on their court. We're barely even talking about basketball. We don't even have to mention the Cleveland Cavaliers nor the Golden State Warriors. There's all kinds of fun things happening around the league from a talent standpoint and a storyline standpoint. But one of the biggest, obviously biggest things are the injuries that have come about so far. Everybody in America saw Gordon Hayward's injury. Less than 10 minutes into the opening game against the Cavaliers. It was gruesome, it was disgusting, and it showed that a lot of the players in the NBA have a decent amount of class. A lot of guys went over to talk to Hayward in the locker room, teammates and non-teammates, obviously. That was a bad situation, but also, yesterday, the Nets' Jeremy Lin, might have been 2 days ago, he ruptured his patella tendon and his season is likely done. The Nets made that announcement today. It was on Wednesday, it was yesterday. Draymond Green for the Warriors, MRI results negative. Status is uncertain on his left knee strain. He missed the final quarter of Tuesday's game. Chris Paul is dealing with the situation. Now, if you recall, the NBA started this season early because they wanted to stretch out games. They wanted to prevent some of these back-to-backs. They wanted to prevent people from having to sit due to rest. But when you start a season earlier, I don't know how many more injuries we have to have before we start to wonder if this move has in fact backfired on the front end. Because while you start the season earlier, that shortens the offseason, the normal sort of body clock that a lot of these guys use to get in shape. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. But I know we've seen some ugly injuries. And I also know that this proves, if it is true, the larger point about this, which is that it's not necessarily the time between games in the NBA. It might just be too many daggone games. These guys, the way they play now, the way people's bodies are, it's not the same grind. Dudes are bigger, stronger, faster. So playing 82 games, the human body is still the human body. And that sounds trite, but my point is that it might be time to shorten the games, because if you're asking bodies to do this for that length of time at the level of execution they're doing, they're not going to be able to do it for as long, as ultimately harms the league. That's the point here. Now, I don't know how many things have to happen before that becomes a reasonable assertion, and I don't really know that it's even fair to correlate those things. But I can tell you that Jeremy Lin going down in a heap and Gordon Hayward going down in a heap and various other guys pulling up after games 1 and 2 is very unfortunate. And that'll dead a whole lot of this progress in terms of what people like about the league. For all these storylines I'm talking about, injuries are not one you want to be part of it. That's not a good situation at all. 1-888-SAY-ESPN, 1-888-729-3776. We're talking about the state of the NBA. We're talking about the injuries. We're talking about the fact that Warriors-Cavs is not remotely the only conversation worth having if you are an actual basketball fan. Marco in D.C., what's up?
Clayton, what's going on, man? Thanks for taking my call.
No problem.
Hey, two quick things. I think real quick on the injury front, I don't think you can correlate, especially what happened with Gordon Hayward and Jeremy Lin on starting early. Those are freak things. Patellar tendon doesn't rupture from, conditioning. That's kind of a freak thing too. Some of the other injuries I'm not so much know what's going on about, but I don't think you can really correlate those things. But what I wanted to talk about is I totally agree with you. I think the state of the NBA is I'm fascinated. Like, I can't wait tonight for Melo playing the Knicks. But one of the things to your point about the offense and how freakishly talented these guys are nowadays, I'm getting tired of people saying how nobody plays defense. I think because of how talented these guys are on offense, they're unguardable. I think someone needs to think about a little more how these guys are so good. The talent has exponentially increased over the last 10, 20, 30 years. If you go back in YouTube, like Jerry West, and even more recent than that.
Hello? Well, Marco, we lost him. Good phone call there. Thank you, Marco. Tough line. It's from a great city in America. That's the District of Columbia. No wonder he's a smart caller. But his point is correct. The entire visual vocabulary of what we understand basketball to be is completely changed if you're, 40 or under. 40 or over. You're not looking at dudes doing the same thing. All right? This is not your grandfather's league. It's just not. So don't tell me guys can't play defense because they're guarding people that were doing things that were never being done before. This is what Marco was getting at, which is a very good point. Let's get one last quick phone call here. John in Philly. How you doing?
What's going on, Clinton? Thanks for taking the phone call, man.
No problem.
All right, so just to follow up on what the dude before me was saying, and you were touching on it with, old heads getting upset about, the idea of, positionless basketball. Why is that a bad thing? You talk about, what's more exciting than you watch Kevin Durant, 6'11", 7 foot, can play every position, taking a ball, blocking a shot, taking it the full length of the court, dunking or pulling up for a three. Why is that bad compared to, I'm thinking, the late 90s when you had, and I don't want to call out, Dale Davis as a power forward, but, dude was very limited, you know what I mean? Good defender.
With you.
But, what was he doing offensively? What's more exciting? And, you talk about Giannis, who you got to talk to your boys at ESPN. We need more nationally televised games for Milwaukee. But, dude can do everything. And, why is that bad? The athletic capability of the NBA is just skyrocketed. And then you look at, other sports, let's be honest, baseball, playoffs are exciting, but regular season's decently boring, right? NFL is not off to, such a hot start. The NBA is the most exciting professional sport to watch right now.
Thanks for the phone call. He's exactly right. I'm totally with him. I would never, ever diss Dale Davis to his face, though. Just a point of clarity, Mr. Davis, if you're listening. I was a large fan of your game. That may or may not be true, but I'm going to say that on the air because I respect your gangster.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Welcome back to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Thursday. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and guests on The Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. You want to hit me up, do so on the 1-800-Flowers Twitter feed, at ESPN Radio, at Clinton Yates. If you want to give us a phone call, 1-888-ESPN, 888-729-3776. Joining us right now is Chris Forsberg, ESPN.com Celtics reporter. The last time I talked to Chris specifically, we were yammering on and on about Danny Ainge's decisions. Right now, Celtics world has changed drastically. I'll ask you on what is, I guess, day 3 of post-Gordon injury, what the state of Celtics fan affairs is right now.
Oh, it's a tough position, right? There's so much hope coming into the season about what this team could be and what they could do after adding 2 All-Stars in Gordon Hayward and Kyrie Irving this offseason. And then you go out and just 5 minutes into that first game, that just not only a horrific injury, but just changes the whole complexion of the season for the Celtics. So I think it's you can tell even last night, their home opener, it's supposed to be the celebration about this year's team and what can be, and guys were just it was tough to get up, and even though they tried to bring Gordon into the mix by putting him up on the jumbotron, all it did was hammer home the fact that he wasn't there. And so I think if you're a Celtics fan, you're looking at this team and you're saying, all right, what are new expectations? And those will probably be diminished a little bit, but you put a bigger stock in the younger players and hope that by the time you get Gordon Hayward back, maybe you can charge back up those what you're shooting for, and maybe you're in a better position a little bit because of it, because these young guys are going to get a chance.
I don't want you to play doctor, Chris, but my basic question is, how bad is it? Like, it looked awful, but they're saying just a fractured ankle, so I'm not really clear on what exactly this means from a health standpoint for Hayward.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone knows right now. They just went in there last night. He gets out of surgery at midnight. It sounds like anyone's hesitant to put a real timetable on it. The one thing that they've kind of stressed is that they expect a full recovery, because when you see a horrific injury like that, fear or not, your first thing is, will he ever be the same player?
Is this it? Yeah.
Yeah, and the way that ankle was bent, that's a fair thing to wonder. But it does sound like. The one thing that the Celtics put out a statement today and said that they had to fix some, they stabilized some ligaments and the bony structure. Something. I'm not putting it on my doctor cap right now, but it does sound like there was something in there that beyond just a clean break of the tibia that they had to go in there and fix. And obviously the ankle was dislocated, and they were able to put that back on the court. Everyone seems to have a different opinion, all these Twitter doctors and experts you hear. Some say there's a chance he can get back, and our Jeff Goodman talked to Shavlik Randolph, who had what sounds like a similar injury, and he was able to get back, breaking it early in the season and getting back by the end of the year. I don't think they want to put that on Gordon right now, especially you just can't expect him to go through this recovery and then be the player that he was coming out that quickly and just mentally getting over those hurdles. I think they're bracing themselves for this to be out for the season. And if somehow you look up in March and he's in a position where he can come back and help this team, maybe then you start thinking about that. But I do think they'll be careful.
Chris Forsberg, ESPN.com Celtics reporter, joins us on The Right Time with Bomani Jones. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Thursday. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Now you can test drive Snapshot to see how much you could save before switching to Progressive. Visit progressive.com/snapshot. Now, look, I'm going to be real about this, Chris. The cynic in me said, Celtics don't look as good. This opens up some avenues for some other teams. Now, I'm being a little bit flip in that, and I'm not trying to not show enough deference to the injury because it's bad. But my question basically is this: how much does this actually hurt the team in terms of their ability to make a deep run, in your opinion?
Oh, for sure. Let's face it. I think coming off of last season, you look at the Celtics and you said, what were they missing? They had a guy in Isaiah Thomas who took his game to an MVP consideration level. But when teams double-teamed him in the postseason, the Celtics really didn't have another option that could step up, who could be a playmaker, who could create their own shot. And so that was the big thing this offseason, is even before the Kyrie trade goes down, they get Gordon, and all of a sudden, this is a guy they could run with the second unit when Kyrie or Isaiah, whoever was going to be, went to the bench. And all of a sudden, even in these first two games, you've seen it. The teams are putting more pressure on Kyrie, and the Celtics have a ton of young guys now. In order to get Gordon Hayward here, to get Kyrie Irving here, they had to sacrifice a lot of their depth. And they just don't. They're running into almost the same problem they had last year. So that naturally puts a ceiling on how far you can go. And so that's on the big thing here to me is how does Kyrie Irving respond to this? Yeah. We know he wanted out of Cleveland in order to be the guy in the spotlight, in order to show he could be a different level of player than we have seen to this point. Does he embrace this? Certainly he'd probably prefer to have Gordon Hayward out there helping him, but this is a chance for him to show that, hey, he can take a team that maybe no one thinks can compete the way it did and try and get them to another level. And then the other thing is the young guys. I go back to it, like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, the number 3 picks in the last 2 drafts. They've looked really good these first 2 games. And I think that's a good thing for the Celtics further down the road, but can they maintain that moving forward, and can they be impact players? That, to me, determines whether Boston hangs with the Torontos and Washingtons and Clevelands. I wonder if as much as it's a little bit of doom and gloom right now, you do wonder if they had found a way to win that game against the Cavs, if they had found a way to hold on to that fourth quarter lead last night against Milwaukee. Maybe we'd be viewing it a little bit differently. Obviously, right now, they got to show that they can win those sort of games in order to be taken as much of a contender as we thought they were coming into the season.
I got to tell you, Chris, one of the things that intrigues me the most about this is Brad Stevens. I mean, this is a very unique coaching position to be in for a lot of different reasons. He's still considered a relatively young coach in this league on certain levels, and this is a challenge like one I cannot remember for a guy like this in the league. How do you think he is going to be able to implement what he does best, considering he lost not just his guy that he wanted this offseason, but his guy from college?
Yeah, you think about it. He came into the year, and you could tell he was very excited about all the new pieces. But here you are, a coach coming off a 53-win season. People have upped their expectations of you, and you got to figure out how to integrate 11 new guys onto your team. So there was already a challenge in that. Now you've lost one of the two star players that were supposed to help you, the guy you were probably most familiar with and knew how to best utilize his skill set. So this definitely puts a challenge on Brad. I mean, you look at their roster. There's a lot of young guys. I think they played 4 rookies last night, not only Tatum, but Semi Ojeleye and Daniel Tice, who came over from Germany. There's a lot of young guys that are out there trying to figure things out on the fly. And, I mean, I think Kyrie looked up at one point last night and was like, man, I haven't even practiced with some of these dudes yet because we didn't think we'd be in this position where the Celtics would be playing these young guys. So they've got to figure that out. That's a challenge on Brad. How do you mix and match these guys now? But I do think he'll embrace that. The one thing that Brad loves is, is sort of being that underdog. It's that was kind of the big thing coming into the year too. It's like the Celtics had never had lofty expectations on them. With this new group, it was sort of assumed they had to get back to that conference final level. Well, now they're the Butler type again. They're the spunky underdog, and how
we lose Chris. Anyway, the Celtics are in a bad position. I was going to ask him about Giannis next. I feel bad. I wanted to hear what somebody who actually saw the man play in person thought. Anyway, he's Chris Forsberg. He's ESPN.com Celtics reporter. We like him. He seems to be in relatively decent spirits considering the situation. I think once the initial shock was gotten over in Boston, you sort of realized, well, this team isn't absolutely garbage. And, eventually he's going to play again. And at least you got Kyrie, too. Man, it would have been awful if they hadn't got the other. Can you imagine that? Imagine the team they'd have if they didn't have Kyrie. Boy, that'd be tough.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Welcome to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Thursday, and ESPN Radio is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Guests on The Right Time up here via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. You want to get in touch with me? Do it. 1-888-ESPN. That's 1-888-729-3776. Or you can test your luck on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at ESPN Radio, at Clinton Yates. It's the top of the hour, so the disclaimer is necessary. If you come incorrect in my mentions, I will embarrass you in front of your friends and your family, and I will not apologize. Understand that. Right now, though, Kian Fahey joins us, and he's brought to us by Upside. Now save big on travel and get a big gift card every trip you buy. You'll love Upside.com. That's Upside.com. Switching gears to football here. It's a Thursday, but let me ask you. Teddy Bridgewater, Kian, seriously returning to Minnesota? I didn't think I'd ever see this guy play in the NFL again. What could that mean for the Vikings?
First, I feel like I should be standing naked on a weighing scales as we weigh in for a UFC fight with the way you invite people to.
That's how I roll.
To call in. Yeah, the big question for me right now is who is clearly the best team in the league. And for a while it's been the Chiefs, but the Chiefs had that game that everyone kind of was worried was going to come, where Alex Smith misses the 2 key throws at the end of the game. The Steelers run over the Chiefs game, and that kind of brought back the concerns that you have with the Chiefs. And so when I look around the league, the team I see as the team that's the best team in the league would be Vikings if they could get average quarterback play. They get that from Sam Bradford, they get higher than that from Sam Bradford, but obviously he's not healthy. They don't from Case Keenum. He spent all the last 2 weeks trying to throw the game away, and the defense just managed to bail him out. And if Teddy Bridgewater, they have 3 games before the bye. They have 2 games before the bye week, so it's 3 weeks with the bye. The 2 games before the bye are very winnable with Keenum. And if Bridgewater gets back to an average quarterback, to even a slightly below average quarterback, they could still have a really good chance of being a legitimate Super Bowl team, because the offense there right now is very good. It's not what it used to be, and the defense there is dominant. It's primed to get even better as well, because they've got a lot of young guys in the primes of their careers.
You mentioned the Chiefs before, but at the top of the AFC, we got an interesting little situation. Out of all these teams, the Chiefs, the Patriots, the Steelers, with my boy Benjamin Todd Roethlisberger, Who's the best of those teams, and what do you think's going on with them?
Well, this is why it's interesting, because the Chiefs are a perfect matchup for the Patriots. We explained that after week 1, where all the misdirection plays that the Chiefs use, the Patriots front seven can't react to, and that sets up those deep shots for Tyreek Hill, for Travis Kelce, for even James O'Shaughnessy, even other tight ends, Demetrius Harris, the guys who can work the middle and break downfield. The problem that becomes then is the Steelers are the perfect matchup for the Chiefs, because Le'Veon Bell can just keep running the ball, and because they have a very fast front seven. They've got guys like Ryan Shazier, Bud Dupree. They've got Cameron Hayward and Stephon Tuitt on the defensive line, who are big body players, but they're guys who move laterally really well. So they match up to the Chiefs' offense really well, and on the other side of the ball, they match up quite well as well. So you've now got a Chiefs team that can comfortably beat the Patriots, and a Steelers team that can comfortably beat the Chiefs, but then you've got a Patriots team that can probably comfortably beat the Steelers. And that's because Bill Belichick knows how to match up to the Steelers' offense, and the Steelers' defense has had major issues with Tom Brady throughout the whole course of his career. That's because they always use the same game plan. They always drop guys into coverage, rush 3, rush 2 at times, and Brady just stands in the pocket and picks them apart. So the seeding here might prove to be hugely important, because what matchups we get will determine how the playoffs pan out.
He's Kean Fahey from PreSnapBreeds.com and the Nickel Package podcast on Tuesdays. Joins us here on The Right Time with Bomani Jones. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Thursday. All right, now, I'm on record as saying that the Eagles are a pretty good team, that they're for real. I love Carson Wentz. I think he's playing like a number 2 quarterback. How do you feel about him, even though you've told me before you're not nearly as high on him as I am?
No, I am number 1 Carson Wentz hater, apparently. I used to be number 1 Kirk Cousins hater. I get moved around from team to team in the NFC East, it seems. No, Carson Wentz had probably his best... The thing that happens a lot, I find, with the perception of quarterbacks is if they have their best game in a primetime game, they get that reputation. And Carson Wentz had his best game of the season against the Panthers. And really it boiled down to one great drive in that game, which was the touchdown where he had that deep throw to Alshon Jeffrey down the left sideline. Besides that, they scored 2 short field touchdowns, and for the rest of the game he wasn't really up to much. And the thing about that game, though, it was his best deep passing game of the season. But that still only brought him up to about a 35% accuracy for the year, which is about 10% below average. That's still a major concern for me. He's still also throwing interceptable passes at a high rate, and his overall accuracy is low. So I think that's going to catch up to him. The comfort for it is that the Eagles have the best offensive line in the league right now. They have a defensive front that dominates opponents all the time. Jeffrey is able to get open consistently as well. So he's set up for success there. He's going to be consistent enough and good enough, and where he's going to develop enough over the course of the season to make such a dominant team that they could be, I don't know about that.
He's a winner. Don't you get that? That's all of us stupid Yankees want, is a guy to lead us in the battle and win. It's a ridiculous storyline. You're exactly right. The primetime thing is very overrated. That's a very good point. Speaking of primetime, Chiefs-Raiders tonight, what should I be looking for from your standpoint?
I think we already talked about the Chiefs. We've kind of talked to Chiefs to death a little bit. The big thing with the Raiders is like Derek Carr. It feels like Derek Carr has rushed back from that back injury. I'm generally someone who thinks Derek Carr is an effective quarterback and probably an above average quarterback. I'd never really got the top 5 talk and all that hype. But when you're coming off a back injury, like we've Tony Romo in the boot right now, and the reason he's in the boot is because he played with a bad back and his back got worse. So that's my concern with Carr, and his accuracy is going to be impacted. But the big thing is he's playing his second game in 4 days. Like when you're healthy, that's not a good idea. So if Carr's back is going to be an issue, if it's going to be stiff, if he's going to be trying to loosen up for half the game, the Chiefs will probably have an easy victory. But the other big kind of, and maybe it's more of a fantasy thing, but Amari Cooper's involvement in the offense just isn't there. I think it was Field Yates tweeted out something earlier today where Cooper hasn't had a reception of over 9 yards in the last month, which is a crazy thing for a guy who's that talented. Even considering EJ Manuel played half a game or a game and a half, whatever it is, he's just too talented to be that limited and that have such little impact on games.
The Browns, you actually watch this team? I mean, I know it's your job, but like you actually have to do this, and you actually have to break down that film.
No. You see,
Kevin Hogan.
This is the key. You see, I'm a veteran at this stage, so you watch the Browns, you watch the bad teams while Red Zone is on the Sunday. So you kind of have something to get you through the day, so you don't have to go back through it all. But Kevin Hogan might have had the worst performance I've ever seen from any. This is coming from someone who's watched Ryan Fitzpatrick and Brock Osweiler in great detail. He literally can't throw the ball. His first interception, it was like a 10-yard out route from the near side of the field, so that's the near hash. So it's about a 15, 16-yard throw, and the ball was about 2 seconds too late, and John and Joseph just broke on it, and he didn't actually catch that when he got an interception later on. But yeah, they're going back to Deshaun Kaiser. Kaiser wasn't good, but Kaiser's also extremely young, and his big plays, his positive plays were all there. So they've got to the right spot again. The problem is you don't know if Hugh Jackson is kind of just desperate at this stage and making ridiculous moves for the sake of making ridiculous moves.
All right, last question, Kian. Who has the upside this weekend?
So, not to blow my own trumpet a little bit, but before the season, I wrote an article called Colin Kaepernick is Better Than Joe Flacco, and I went through it, and the reasons why were Joe Flacco's usually inaccurate, and he throws a lot of turnovers. And that's been the case this year. Now Flacco has to go into Minnesota, and like that defense we just talked about, that Everson Griffin, you've got Daniel Hunter, you've got guys coming off the edges, you've got Anthony Barr, looks good again this year after a down year last year, and that's an offensive line without Marshall Yanda. It's an offensive line that has struggled. So you've got Flacco in there who's likely to make mistakes, who doesn't react well to pressure, and you've got that Vikings defense that just swarms. So Flacco's going to have a rough week, but I think the Vikings defense might have a great week.
All right, he's Kian Fahey. You can see him on presnapbreeds.com, and you can listen to his podcast, The Nickel Package, every Tuesday. Thank you, Kian.
Thanks, man.
Coming up, going to talk about Zeke Elliott's 6-game suspension. It is apparently on hold again after he was granted a stay. I'm Clinton Yates. Did I say I was Bomani Jones earlier? If I did, I was wrong. Bomani Jones is smarter than I am, and I have hair, and I speak fluent French. But again, he's smarter than me by a lot. ESPN Radio. It's the right time. If you travel for business, you know it's a game of wins and losses. Popping open an overhead bin and finding it empty, that's a win. Sleeping through a wake-up call, that's a loss. Buying your business trip at Upside.com, well, that's not just a win, kiddos. It's a triple win. Number one is Upside has the absolute best available prices for flights, hotel, and rental cars. Win number two, and that Upside will reward you with a gift card to places like Amazon.com every time you buy a business trip. And number three is the amazing 6-star treatment from Upside's customer service specialists, who they call navigators. Upside navigators are instantly accessible 24/7 on the Upside app, even reaching out to you to help you avoid a problem before it happens. And I'm going to start your Upside 6-star treatment right now. Go to Upside.com and use the code BOMANI, and you'll get a minimum $100 gift card to Amazon.com. That's code BOMANI for a minimum $100 gift card to Amazon.com when you buy your next business trip at Upside.com. Upside.com, you deserve a better business trip. Minimum purchase required. See site for complete details.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
All right, y'all, here's the news. Ezekiel Elliott's 6-game suspension is again on hold after the Cowboys running back was granted a stay. A U.S. District Court judge in New York granted a temporary restraining order blocking the league's 6-game suspension of Elliott. The judge ordered the NFL to appear before a presiding judge in New York by October 30th to argue why the suspension should not be blocked. Now, those of you who were listening to this program last week, when I was thinking that the Nationals were going to advance to a different championship series, and they weren't, took a little sojourn to talk to Adam Schefter, as they do every week on The Right Time at 5:30. Now, he sort of casually mentioned the news that Ezekiel Elliott was going to have to serve a suspension, and then proceeded to say that actually there was one little out on that. Let's hear Schefter from last week talk with me about this bye week situation.
What happens is if the Cowboys were not on a bye week, then the suspension would go into effect for this weekend, and it would be over, okay? The 6-game suspension would begin. But the fact that the Cowboys are on a bye week affords Ezekiel Elliott some legal options at this point, which he and his lawyers are now going through. They could try to refile the case back in Texas. They could refile the case in New York and try to get a hearing and a ruling from the court to stave off the suspension. But the fact of the matter is they are now discussing their options with the Cowboys on that bye week. There will be a flurry of activity next week. There will be legal options for Zeke to get the suspension temporarily lifted. The legal team is now trying to figure it out. If the Cowboys were home this weekend, playing this weekend, it would be in effect, but they're not. So in the interim, the legal teams are mulling their options, and the bye gives him and his attorney some time right now to figure out what they want to do. The other option, I guess, is they could just say, look, Dallas is 2-3. Season's not working the way we want so far. You have to serve the 6 games. Might as well just take on medicine now. But that has not been their stance all along. I don't know why it would be now. That would be another option. But again, as it was explained to me, the legal team is mulling its options to determine whether it wants to refile the case in Texas or New York next week.
Now, that was Adam Schefter, ESPN NFL insider, who, by the by, is going to join us next segment talking about what happened. That was last week. My first reaction to that was, hold up. You're telling me this guy's getting another chance after, and pardon me if I do not have all the legal mumbo-jumbo terminology correctly, but basically, after he was suspended once, he was given a stay and didn't actually have to serve it until later in the season for whatever reason. And now that he actually is supposed to sit out the 6 games, they throw him a lifeline during the bye week as just a matter of legal timing? Look, I'm not accusing anybody of anything untoward. Not remotely, because I don't know nearly that much about how these court systems work. All right, I know that there was a judge in Texas who's the original one that said you can play a couple more games, but this to me is weird. I'm sorry. The one chance you had that could have potentially played you more games, some other court made a ruling just in time for that to happen that gave you the loophole allowed for that to go down? You know, I'm not Encyclopedia Brown over here to make a very dated reference to books that most of you probably have not read nor care about. But that strikes me as rather fortuitous. Like, how does that happen? If he ends up not having to serve this suspension for whatever reason and it gets delayed again, I don't really know, in fact, at that point, how good that becomes for the Cowboys season. This has turned into a year-long story, a season-long story, if you will. I'm not so sure that this is necessarily how you wanted this to play out if you're a Cowboys fan. Sure, that team needs him. And sure that if you actually believe that he's been treated unfairly, then you want to go through with whatever due process it is in order for him to clear his name or whatever it may be. But at this stage, this is a week-to-week headache in terms of when you're finally going to have to sit this guy. And there is an argument that this has been not advantageous to the team overall. It's not like the Cowboys are out here kicking butt. They're 2-3 with him. You think about the fact that it would have been a 6-game suspension, it would have been one more week, and then he'd been gone, and then he'd be back. You could have at least figured out what you were doing in the interim. But now a lot of different balls are in the air. You realize that the team probably ain't doing that well anyway, and you're fighting legal battle. Not you, but one as in one person on the team and sort of the team as a representative, whatever. They're fighting legal battles all over the place. This just seems like, I hate to use this word, Shannon. It seems like a distraction. That's just me.
And interesting with the Cowboys, usually their distractions are self-inflicted, so they can thank their team owner for that one.
Right, which is, that's a different discussion altogether. But I wonder, if you're a Cowboys fan right now, would you have rather have just taken the 6 games off top and said, serve them? Sucks if it wasn't actually deserved, but what's going on right now in terms of whether or not he's playing, whether or not he was ever really able to gain the focus he needed to get into this season or not, was that all worth the fight? I don't know the answer to that. I also don't root for the Cowboys, so I don't have the same sort of vested psychological interest in this. But if I did, I feel like at this point I would start to be worrying that maybe they went a little too far. Especially because, excuse me, this is not a legal matter anymore. This is just a suspension in the league. It's not like this is a matter of him going to jail or somehow finding himself guilty in a court of law. This is literally just a football at this point. I understand that, if you serve a suspension, it sets precedent if other things happen down the line in terms of your football career, yada, yada. I mean, I get that, but I don't know. It doesn't feel like they've thrown away their season necessarily, because who knows how good they were going to be, but they were a good team last year. They seem to have zero continuity flowing through from last season to this season. Cowboys are not in a good place right now. Not remotely. And you know what? That doesn't bother me at all.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Welcome back to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Thursday, and ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on The Right Time up here via the Shell Penzo Performance Line, and if you want to hit me up, you can do so. The 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed is one way, or you can call me at 1-888-SAY-ESPN. That's 1-888-729-3776 if you choose the former route and not the latter. The disclaimer is as follows. If you come incorrect in my mentions, I will embarrass you in front of your friends and your family, and I will not apologize. So tread lightly, kiddos. It's time to talk about baseball. The Yanks are up in the series against the Stros now. I might have mentioned on Around the Horn that I thought some of the problems with the Astros were simply that the moment was a little large. I understand that their offense is tremendous. I understand that they got a good team, and I understand that Mr. Verlander has boosted that staff. But new Yankee Stadium is still Yankee Stadium. And when those guys get to feeling motivated and having fun the way they've been having, especially what you saw at the end of the season, it's a little difficult to beat them. And what's weird about it is that I don't mind watching it. And I only say weird for one reason. Because we're going to have a little something I like to call a little narrative buster session. Because there are multiple narratives that exist around the Yankees that I think, A, are not only false, but B, overplayed by both sides. And let me explain. There's a long-time belief that because of the way the Yankees created teams and won in the stretch that they were winning so much most recently, that it was by default like looked upon as sort of unfair and, how do I say this, greedy and in many ways lame. But I think that was overall for the average sports fan maybe something they felt to be true. But for a baseball fan, I don't think most people were offended by their existence in terms of how they went about their business. They had the core four. They added pieces as they needed. You can insert whatever level of resentment you may or may not have had for the Steinbrenner family. But I think overall, if you were a fan of baseball before this happened, in terms of their run in the 90s and 2000s, okay, it wasn't a big deal. They were the Yankees. They won a lot. I'm 36 years old. I remember plenty years when that franchise was garbage. Legit. Which is the other narrative that became problematic in that era, which was that they won everything every single season, and as a result, it made sense. The evil empire, so to speak, is sort of a construct of the mind that exists through the detritus of Red Sox fans that had problems with them for so long. But once the Red Sox won a couple and started winning, you start to realize who's really the evil empire here? What's really going on? What's this all about? Now we got to deal with these Beantown guys yelling at me every single day of the week? So when you put all this together, my point is the likability factor of the Yankees as a franchise, even as a non-fan of the team, was always skewed around something that probably didn't make sense based on which constituency you were a part of. Now, if you lived in New York for any amount of time, there was that. There was a lot of people that sort of just glommed on to being Yankees fans, which was probably the thing that was most real that upset other people, was folks that weren't from New York actually talking about the Yanks as if they were their squad. I got that. They had a lot of that, and I understood why that upset sports fans. But overall, I'm not going to say the Yankees are just another franchise because that's not what I believe. But what I'm saying is that what they did and how they came to make that squad what it was in that era was ultimately something that I didn't consider to be particularly hateable. So, that said, that did not necessarily mean that I loved the Yanks as they existed in the baseball world. There are a lot of lovable teams, so to speak. People like to believe that the Cubs were lovable at one point. I also sort of believe this is a figment of the imagination of most Chicago Cubs fans, but that's a different discussion. But right now, this team is extremely likable.
Wow. There's one thing to say, to ask whether or not the Yankees are likable, but now are we in the lovable category now?
I didn't say that.
Have the Yankees moved?
I didn't say lovable.
Have they graduated from likable to lovable?
I said this before.
Oh, boy.
I'm a radio professional. I choose my words with care and passion. They are extremely likable.
Uh-huh. All right.
That's where I'm at.
But why do you think it is with the Yankees in their likability this year? Is it because they didn't go out and spend money on the big free agent? Yeah, they brought Chapman back and spent money for him, but it's not like they went out and overpaid for a guy this year. How much of that do you think factors into it? Also, with their better players being guys that were brought up in the system, Sanchez and Judge and guys like that.
I think it is the specific personalities of the dudes. Let's look at some of the guys. This matters. Aaron Judge is a fun guy. He looks like he should be playing tight end for the Browns or the Giants. They might have an offense if he did. Anyway, What I'm saying is that he is a fun, loving guy. He won the home run derby was a great situation. Brett Gardner has finally turned into sort of the elder statesman kind of. I don't want to say that word, so I'm not going to call him that. But he's sort of the hard vocal leader. The makeup of the squad doesn't seem to just be soulless dudes who are pressed about not having beards and acting like all they're there to do is win, and that's all they care about. They seem to have some level of fun and camaraderie. Never mind Didi Gregorius, who I'm still convinced threw that ball away 2 games ago simply so that he could get a close-up on his dope sneakers that he was wearing at shortstop.
Mm-hmm. So if I heard you correctly, in describing this team, would it be safe to say that this team is scrappy?
I don't like
and guys like Gardner have high motors.
I don't like
and these guys they're gamers. They're gamers out there. You have some guys. You look at a guy like Sanchez. You wouldn't think he's as athletic as he is, but he's kind of sneaky athletic. They're a gritty team, and they starting in the playoffs in that wild card win. These guys are winners. Okay, and look at the long at bats they have. This is a team that has a lot of high IQ players. The good fundamentals. They just go out there and play the game the right way. You don't have a lot of egos on this team. It's a lot of lunch pail guys. They're pretty heady. I would say the guys are cerebral, if you ask me. There's a lot of gym rats on that team. Guys will be the first ones to get there and the last ones to leave. They have all the intangibles in the world. This team plays with a lot of heart. You look up and down that lineup, nothing but grinders. They will out hustle you. And at the end of the day, they have guys on this team that I would love for my daughter to date.
You ran out of baseball analogies after move 5 there, by the way. Had to return later. Just don't think I wasn't paying attention.
All right. I got to personalize this one though for the Yankees for you. Okay. You say you don't hate them and you respect how they went about.
I like Aaron Judge. I like Didi Gregorius. I like Brett Gardner.
Okay, aside from the players themselves, getting back to the organization. So how much will you like the Yankees in a couple years if they go out and make a big free agent splash, outfielder in excess of, say, $400 million, a certain guy who plays for the
I'll like them just fine because I'll blame the Nationals for losing them, not blame the Yankees for wanting him because I'm a grown adult in charge of my feelings. When it comes to baseball, I'm lying. But what I'm saying is that I actually would in that scenario. I mean, look. My point is that these sort of I can't even explain this without sounding like a complete idiot.
Go ahead,
sort
of
structural mechanisms of why people hated the Yankees, I think, don't make sense anymore. I genuinely don't. I genuinely don't. I don't have a problem with this team. The team, the squad, the roster.
It's gonna take some getting used to seeing Bryce Harper without facial hair, but that's on another day.
You're really trying to press me. But we get to hour 3, and now you're out here trying to get me revved up. I'm a race car in the red right now, Jules. Okay? And you know what happens when a race car is in the red. I don't have a problem with this team. I picked the Stros in the series. I like watching the Yankees play. It does not bother me when they win or lose. This is just another baseball team playing for not just another baseball franchise.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Clinton Yates filling in here on a Thursday. Guests on The Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And if you dare, hit me up on the 1-800-Flowers Twitter feed, at Clinton Yates, at ESPN Radio. Got a phone line too, 1-888-ESPN, 888-729-3776. The baseball talk continues. because that's what happens when the bad guy's in the building. All right. So I read a story the other day that the headline alone had my heart beating on a level that I could only qualify as tremendously nervous anxiety that used to await me before I played high school sports games that I was genuinely looking forward to. Headline: Expansion could trigger realignment, longer postseason. That's from Baseball America. And this breakdown of what things could be is incredible. Now, I know you all know that I love baseball, and I love it as a sport as much as I love it as a league, as much as I love Major League Baseball as a league, as much as I love it as a construct. But what we're talking about here, in terms of all of this other stuff that we could see, let me break this down for you. I'll just read from it, if you will. This is written by Tracy Ringlesby of Baseball America. In September, the folks in Portland, Oregon were given hope that they, too, could be home to an expansion team when Commissioner Rob Manfred, speaking in Seattle for the second year in a row, mentioned Portland as a potential site for a franchise and was quoted as saying a team in the West would be part of any expansion. Let us fast forward to the important part for the rest of the league. There seems to be a building consensus that baseball will soon be headed to a 32-team configuration. One proposal would be to geographically restructure into 4 divisions, which would create a major reduction in travel, particularly for teams on the East and West Coast, and add to the natural rivalries, listen close, kiddos, by not just having them as interleague attractions, but rather as a part of the regular divisional battles. There is so much I love about this. Number one, I am a massive fan of even-numbered leagues in terms of your teams for simple playoff balance. You got to have that. You have to have that. Otherwise, it's just awkward. The math is botched. It's annoying to look at from a visual standpoint when you're presenting everything. This stuff matters. Going to 32 teams would be a great move. Portland, also, great place. Hillsborough Hops, I love you out there, but a big league squad out there would be a whole other matter. Don't get me started on The Battered Bastards of Baseball. It's the best baseball movie I've ever seen, and will be yours too if you see it. Different discussion. Let's get back to this, though. 4 8-team divisions, if you added Portland and you brought a team back to Montreal, which was the first part of what I was saying that I didn't mention earlier, pardon me. East Division, Atlanta, Baltimore, Cincinnati, Miami, Philly, Pittsburgh, Tampa, and Washington. I love this idea. There's nothing not to like about that, in my opinion. If you're a fan, you got shorter routes you got to travel. They all sort of matter in a mathematical way that makes a little bit more sense. North Division, Boston, Cleveland, Detroit, Minnesota, Montreal, both New York franchises, and Toronto. Again, I love the idea of both city teams being in the same division. It makes more sense. Midwest, both Chicago franchises, Colorado, Houston, Kansas City, Milwaukee, St. Louis, and Texas. As they say on Twitter, spot the lie. Tell me where this is a problem. And in the West, Anaheim, Arizona, Los Angeles, Oakland, Portland, San Diego, San Francisco, and Seattle. This is one of those things that makes so much sense, it almost is making me mad that it's not instituted right now. You shorten the games, you shorten the league, the league schedule, 156 games. You go 6 at home, 6 on the road against all your divisional opponents. And you get an off day every week. This is beautiful. All right? It's beautiful. And it's about time that if baseball is going to do this, you do it all the way. And this is the all-the-way system that makes sense, in my opinion. What you do with the DH, I don't really honestly care. Look, there are purists that live in this world that want to tell me that the reason you need the leagues is because pitchers got a bat, because that's what they remember when they were a kid, and they want to see double switches, and they want to see sack bunts, and blah, 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 yakety schmackety, as the dad on Tasmania used to say, or whatever that show was called. But come on, man. If you can realign like this, a proper setup, you add playoff teams. You're at 12 playoff teams out of a 32-team system. This is sexy, for lack of a better term. Oh, I love this. You know, and this is what makes me mad, is that sometimes I get so fired up about these baseball systems that I start to get mad about how long things have already existed. And I'm like, why the heck haven't they done this sooner? Of course, adding teams is not the easiest thing to do. But you're trying to tell me that Montreal probably couldn't use a franchise after the time they've had off? Montreal is one of the great baseball cities in North America. Go up there sometime and peep game. Of course it didn't work out and they ended up moving down to be the Nationals. I'm not out here gloating about that like, nah, y'all botched it. You don't need a team. I'm from D.C. You know how many teams this city lost before they got the Nationals? Los dos, chico. The Twins and the Rangers is who they became, in case you didn't know that. So for me, yo, go ahead, add some squads. Portland, Oregon is a great place in America. Montreal could use one too. If this helps you round out and balance things out, this is ultimately great for baseball. It's a regional sport by popularity during the regular season anyway. If you could do something to bolster that for fans, from a competitive standpoint, it is a smart move in the right direction. You've got to blow it all up, though. Get rid of the leagues. Put the city rivals in division. You've got to do all of it. You can't do it half and half because it doesn't make sense otherwise. This system, though, is beautiful.
Thanks for listening to the Right Time Podcast. Please come back tomorrow for more. And don't forget to listen to The Right Time with Bomani Jones from 4 p.m. to 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.